Welcome back to video 4 of our 10 video home buyer series. If you're just joining us, I would encourage you to go back and find video 1 and play catch up. Now, this video series is intended to give you all the answers to the test so that you can save a lot of money and get your dream home versus making rookie mistakes that could cost you tens of thousands of dollars or even that dream home that you were looking for. Let's get into building an offer. So you found it, the house, the one that checks all of your boxes. It feels like home and it fits your budget. Now comes the moment that separates smart buyers from buyers who overpay or lose their dream home, making an offer. I am David Karras, and in this video, I'm going to be walking you through the entire making an offer phase, from understanding what your home is actually worth to crafting a competitive offer. We're going to talk about navigating negotiations and counter offers and what happens the moment your offer is accepted. Now, most buyers approach this phase emotionally and not strategically. They either overpay out of fear of losing the house, or they lowball and insult the seller. Both approaches cost you, either in money or in lost opportunities. Now, you're going to learn how to run a comparative market analysis like a professional investor. You're going to understand market conditions and how they affect your strategy. We're going to craft an offer that's competitive but not desperate. We're going to master the art of negotiations and counter offers and know exactly when to walk away and understand what happens once you're under contract and how to protect yourself during that critical period. Now, by the end of this video, you'll have the confidence to make an offer that gets accepted without overpaying. You're going to learn how to negotiate like a pro and navigate and understand the under contract period without missing a critical deadline. And if you're finding this video series helpful, please do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications. We're building the most comprehensive home buying guide on YouTube, and the next video is going to cover inspections and appraisals, two things that can either make or break your deal. So let's dive in. First, let's talk about understanding home value and the comparative market analysis. Now, before you make an offer on any property, you need to know what it's actually worth, not what the seller wants for it, not what Zillow's Zestimate says, but what it's actually worth based on real data. This is where the comparative market analysis comes in. Investors and real estate agents, they use this process to make sure that they're not overpaying for properties. So what is a CMA? A comparative market analysis, or CMA, is a report that estimates the property's value based on comparing it to similar homes that have recently sold in the same area. Think of it like this. If 3 similar homes on the same street sold for around $400,000 in the past 3 months, your target home is probably worth around $400,000 too, assuming it's in similar condition. Now, your real estate agent will prepare a CMA for you. This is one of the most valuable services that they provide, and it's included in their services. What a CMA includes: it's going to look at what recently sold and compare it to other properties. They're known as comps. Now, these are homes that recently sold, typically within the last 3 to 6 months, hopefully in the same neighborhood or very close by. They are similar in size, age, style, and condition, and these are the most important because they show what buyers actually paid. Next, let's talk about active listings, which are your current competition. So homes currently on the market are what you're competing against. These help gauge current market conditions, but they don't count much towards market value like sold homes do. Think of it like this. I can list a house for $1 million, but it doesn't mean it's worth it. So you can't use the unsold homes as good comparables. The next type of comparable is pending sales. Now, these are homes under contract, but not yet closed. They show very recent market activity and are a good indicator of current buyer demand. Then we have expireds, cancels, and withdrawn listings. These are the homes that didn't sell. Typically, it's because they were overpriced or not in good condition, and it shows you what not to pay. The key is looking at properties that are truly comparable. Same neighborhood, same square footage, same number of bedrooms, same number of bathrooms, similar in age, similar in condition, similar in lot size. and other comparable features and updates. Now, it's important for you to have an understanding of recent comparable sales data. It's important to note that not all comparable sales are created equal. You need to know how to evaluate them properly, and we're going to get into that. So, what makes a good comp or comparable? First, we need to look at proximity. The best comparables are in the same neighborhood, ideally the same street. Good comparables are within about a half a mile of the subject property, and acceptable comparables can go out as far as 1 mile radius. But you have to be careful. Once you go beyond that 1 mile, or even within that 1 mile, it could put you into a different micro market where homes can have different values. The next one that we're going to talk about is recency. So the best comparables have sold within the last 30 to 60 days. Good comparables, they've sold within the last 90 days. Acceptable have sold within the last 6 months. Okay? But you have to be cautious though. Older than 6 months could be invalid due to market changes. This is why appraisers typically do not like to push past that 6-month mark. Now, in rapidly changing markets, you should prioritize more recent sales, even if they're slightly further away. The next topic we're going to discuss is similarity. Comps should have a square footage comparison within 10 to 20%. I try to keep it within 10%. The bedrooms and bathrooms should match or be very close, not a 3-bedroom to a 5-bedroom. Okay, these should be, they should be of similar era of construction. Don't compare a home built in 2020 to one built in 1985. Lot size, it should be similar in size. Comparing a home on an acre to one on a fifth of an acre is not a good comparable. Now let's talk about condition. This is huge. Updated versus out of date. That makes a big difference. Does it have bonus features like a garage, a basement, a pool, shed, things like that? Once you find comps, you need to adjust the differences. No two homes are identical, so you have to make these adjustments. Comparable homes are better if they look at things that have, finished out the same, right? So, if they have a basement, does the other one have a basement? Does it have an extra bathroom? Does it have extra bedroom? What are those worth, right? Do you subtract $7,500 if it's missing a bedroom? Do you add $5,000 if it has another bathroom? You're just adjusting things like that. Does it have an enclosed garage or attached garage versus detached garage? Your target home is worth less by these amounts if comparable homes are worse. Okay. If it needs a new roof, deduct 15 grand. If it's outdated kitchen, deduct 12 grand. If there's no garage, deduct about 5,000. Your target home is worth more by these amounts. Now, these numbers I've just given you, they're just example purposes. Your real estate advisor will be able to give you a better idea of value based on your local market. Now, let's go over an example CMA breakdown. You got target home, 123 Main Street. It's 2,000 square feet. It's a 3-2 built in 1995. It has an updated kitchen and the asking price is $425,000. Comparable sale number 125 Main Street. It sold 45 days ago for $415,000. It's 2,050 square feet, 3-2, built in 94. It also has an updated kitchen. It's very similar. Okay, it sold recently and it's on the same street. So let's look at an adjustment. It's slightly larger, so let's add about $2,500. Okay, we adjusted value is $412,500. Comparable sell 2, 456 Oak Street, 2 blocks away. Sold 60 days ago for $405,000. It's 1,950 square feet. It's a 3-2 built in 98 and has an outdated kitchen. So we need to make a couple adjustments here. It is similar, so we will deduct $2,000 for the size. Okay. It has an outdated kitchen, so we're going to make the $15,000 adjustment. It is a little bit newer, so let's just add $3,000. So the adjusted value, $421,000. Comparable sell 3, 789 Elm Street, same neighborhood. It sold 30 days ago for $430,000. It's 2,100 square feet. It's 2.5, built in 1996. Updated kitchen and a finished basement. So let's see what we need to do for adjustments for this. It's larger, so let's add $5,000. Has an extra half bath, so we'll add $5,000. Finished out basement, let's add $20,000. So the adjusted value now, $400,000. So the average of adjusted comps is $411,166. So based on this data, we can come up with a conclusion. Based on recent comparable sales, the target home at 123 Main Street is worth approximately $410,000 to $415,000. The asking price of $425,000 is 2 to 4% above market value. Next, we needed to look at some red flags and comparables. First, we're going to talk about days on market and how they're important. If your target home has been listed for 90 days or more while comparables sold quickly, there's a reason why. Next is price reductions. Multiple price drops suggest the seller started too high and is adjusting to get to a good price. Now let's look at some unique features. When it comes to unique features, you need to be careful comparing them. For example, a home with a pool to one without a pool, pools don't always add value equal to their cost. Most pools add between 3 and 6% of the home's value. So for a $400,000 house, the max would be about $24,000 in added value. Don't add or subtract anything for above ground pools. Now, just because homes have solar panels doesn't mean it adds value. Appraisers give nothing if the panels are leased, and they give very, very little if they're owned due to their depreciative nature. Now, what about distressed sales? Short sales or foreclosures may sell below market value and skew your analysis, and it's important to keep those in mind and use them as a last resort. Next, let's talk about those flip sales, okay? So recently flipped homes might sell for more than they're worth if staging and marketing are exceptional, and this may skew data, especially if you're looking at a house built in 1980 that's really close to original condition, and comparing it to one that had been flipped. That's not a good idea. So why does this matter? If you are armed with a solid CMA, you know several things. You know whether the asking price is fair, high, or low. You know what a reasonable offer will look like. You know your negotiation position, and you know whether you're getting a deal or you're going to be overpaying. Now, this information, it prevents you from making emotional decisions based on fear or excitement, right? Every time I think about that, I think about that guy. Emotional damage, right? That's what happens. So how do we determine a competitive offer price? You now know what the home is worth, but how do you decide what to actually offer? This depends on several factors beyond just the CMA. Factor 1, market conditions. If you're in a hot seller's market, you would want to offer at or above asking potentially. If you're in a balanced market, offer close to asking with some room to negotiate. If you're in a buyer's market, offer below asking with confidence. Factor number 2, let's look at days on market. If they're between 0 and 30 days, it indicates a new listing. These give you less negotiating room. 31 to 60 days is considered normal and gives you moderate negotiation rooms. 61 to 90 days, that indicates the listing is getting stale and gives you more negotiating room. 90 or more days gives you significant negotiating opportunity, but you have to wonder, why hasn't it sold? And that depends on the market. Here in San Antonio, the average days on the market are floating between the high 80s and the mid 90s. So it could just be status quo. However, the longer a home sits, the more motivated the seller becomes. Factor 3, listing price versus market value. We're going to determine that from your CMA. If asking price equals market value, offer at or slightly below asking. If asking price is less than market value, offer at or above asking. This is rare, but it can happen. If asking price is greater than market value, offer below asking and closer to the actual value. Factor 4, property condition. Move-in ready may be worth full market value. If it needs cosmetic updates, deduct 5 to 10%. If it needs major repairs, deduct 10 to 20% and consider walking away. Try to get contractor estimates if possible before making an offer. This may be hard to do. If you cannot do it before submitting an offer, make sure you do it during the inspection phase. Factor 5, your competition. Are multiple offers being expected? If so, be aggressive. Ask for fewer contingencies. If there is little competition, you have leverage. Negotiate and build in contingencies. If it's unknown, offer competitively, but protect yourself with contingencies. Factor 6. Let's look at seller motivation. Why are they selling? If they already bought another home, they are motivated. If they need to sell due to a job relocation, they are motivated with a timeline pressure. If they're getting a divorce, they're often motivated and want to move on, but be cautious of a vengeful spouse. If they inherited the property, they are often motivated, but may or may not have an emotional attachment to that house, especially if they grew up in it. Are they downsizing? Are they upsizing? If so, they may have moderate motivation. If they have no rush, they are less motivated and will wait for their price. Your agent can sometimes discover this information from the listing agent. Factor number 7, your motivation. How badly do you want this house? Is this your dream home? If it is, be willing to stretch your budget slightly. If it's a great option, make a smart offer, but don't overpay. If it's it's a backup option, it's okay, then offer conservatively. Factor 8, inspection concerns. If you notice potential issues during showing, factor those into your offer price or plan to negotiate after the inspection. Now, let's talk about the strategic offer matrix. Hot market plus low days on market at market price means offer at asking or above. Balanced market plus moderate days on market at market price, offer 1 to 3% below asking. A buyer's market plus high days on market plus above market price, offer 5 to 10% below asking. Now, your agent will help you position your offer based on their knowledge of the local market dynamics and recent negotiations in the area. The main thing to remember is don't just pick a number emotionally. Use data, use market conditions, use the property condition, and strategically make a determination on that offer price. That's competitive, but not foolish or insulting. Now, you want to win the house, but you don't want to overpay by $20,000 because you panicked. Next is understanding market conditions. We're going to be talking about buyer market versus seller market. And whatever market you're in, it matters. The overall market condition dramatically affects your offer strategy. You need to know what kind of market you're in. So what is a seller's market? A seller's market occurs when demand exceeds supply. There are more buyers than there are available homes. Happened during COVID. Characteristics include low inventory, so you have fewer homes on the market for sale. Homes are selling quickly, often within days. You're having a bunch of multiple offers, and bidding wars drive home prices up. Homes often sell at or above asking price. Sellers have leverage in negotiations, and contingencies may be waived to compete against other offers. Now, your strategy in the seller's market: get pre-approved first, not just pre-qualified, before you even start looking. Be ready to move fast when you find that home. Offer at or above asking price. Consider waiving or limiting some contingencies carefully. You don't want to compromise your position. Offer large earnest money deposits as it shows commitment. You need to be flexible on closing timelines. Accommodate to the seller's needs if they need a longer closing time. Write a strong, clean offer with few complications. Consider an escalation clause if your state allows it. Include a personal letter to sellers, but use that cautiously, and we're going to get into that later. Warning though, don't get caught up in bidding wars that push you beyond your budget or make you waive important protections. Know your limit and stick to it. Now let's talk about what a buyer's market is. A buyer's market occurs when supply exceeds demand. That's what we're currently seeing here in Texas, Florida as well. There are more homes available than buyers looking. Now, characteristics include high inventory, so you have a lot of homes on the market for sale. The homes are sitting on the market longer. They go from days and weeks to months. There's few or no multiple offers. Prices are stagnating or even declining. Homes are selling below asking price. Buyers have leverage in negotiation offers. They can include more contingencies for protection. Now, your strategy in a buyer's market is simple. Take your time. There's no need to rush. That house isn't really going anywhere. Offer below asking price with confidence. Include all contingencies you want: inspection, appraisal, financing, you name it. Negotiate for repairs or seller's concessions. Request longer inspection periods. Be more selective. Don't settle. And ask the seller to pay most, if not all, of your closing costs. Opportunity during a buyer's market include motivated sellers who may accept significantly lower offers or agree to repairs they'd refuse in a hot market. Now let's talk about what a balanced market is. A balanced market is when supply and demand are relatively equal. It's like yin and yang. Characteristics of a balanced market include moderate inventory, homes sell in a reasonable time frame, 30 to 60 days. There's occasionally multiple offers, but they're not as common. There is price appreciation, but it's modest. Homes sell close to asking price. Both buyer and seller have some leverage. Now, your strategy in a balanced market is pretty simple as well. Offer close to asking price. 1 to 5% below is considered reasonable. Include standard contingencies. Negotiate respectfully but firmly. There is some flexibility on terms, and then you need to take your time, but don't drag your feet. How do you determine your market type? Super simple. Ask the real estate agent you're working with, right? They know immediately based on their daily experiences. Now, let's check market statistics, okay? Looking at months of inventory is important. If you have less than 3 months, it's a seller's market. 3 to 6 months is a balanced market. More than 6 months is a buyer's market. Another thing to look at is list price to sales price ratio. Homes selling above asking, that's an indicator of a seller's market. Homes selling at asking indicates a balanced market, and homes selling below asking, that indicates a buyer's market. You can also look at local market data. Markets can vary by neighborhood, price range, and property type. Your specific segment might differ from the overall market. Now, understanding your market type is critical to crafting a winning offer strategy. Don't use a buyer's market strategy in a seller's market or vice versa. You'll either lose the house or you're really going to overpay. Now, to talk about crafting your offer. Let's talk about actually putting together your offer and what it's going to look like. There's more to it than just a piece of paper and a price. Offer price strategy is key. We've already discussed how to determine a competitive price with the CMA. Now let's talk about the psychology and the strategy behind the offer amount. Let's look at the pricing psychology first, okay? Let's look at round numbers versus specific numbers. Do they matter? Offering $400,000 says, I picked a round number. Offering $397,500 says, I did my homework and this is what it's worth. Specific numbers can be more compelling because they suggest you've done detailed analysis. I do this with my listings. Last 3 numbers don't matter. I have them pick a birth date, an anniversary, the house number, whatever. So what about slightly below round numbers? If asking $400,000, offering $399 can feel insulting because it's so close but not quite. Offering $395 is clearly negotiating. Offering $387,500 shows you've calculated something specific. Next, give yourself negotiating room. Unless you're in a hot multiple offer situation, don't offer your absolute maximum first. Leave yourself some room to come up in the negotiations. For example, if your max is $400,000 and you offer $400,000, where are you going to go? You have nowhere to go when the seller counters. This is why we use the starter offer. The starter offer is a buyer in a buyer's or balanced market. Consider starting off in 5 to 10% below asking, if asking price is at or above market value. The seller will likely counter and meet you somewhere in the middle. For example, asking price, keep it $400,000. Your starting offer, $370,000. Seller comes back at $390,000, right? Your counter offer, $380,000. Guess where we're going to agree at? We're going to agree at $385,000. It's the middle between $390,000 and $380,000. Now, doing that, you save $15,000 by negotiating. Then we have the strong first offer. In a seller's market or multiple offer situations, your first offer might be your only shot, so make it count. Offering low to test the waters will just get you rejected immediately, and you'll have to go to Dairy Queen and eat some ice cream to try and feel better. Escalation clauses, so we're going to cover that in detail later, but they look like this. You offer $400,000, but will automatically increase the offer up to $425,000 to beat any other offers by $1,000. This lets you stay competitive without drastically overpaying if there's not a lot of competition. Now, don't offer asking price immediately. Even in hot markets, you can often offer 1 to 2% below asking and still be competitive unless it's a multiple offer situation. Offering asking price immediately signals desperation. Another exception is if you've done your CMA and the home is priced below market value, offering asking or above may make sense. Now, your agent knows how sellers typically negotiate, whether other offers are expected, and what similar negotiations have looked like recently. The seller's motivation and timeline is, if the listing agent shares it, is also important to know. You got to trust the guidance, but ultimately the decision is yours. Now let's talk about the earnest money deposit. When you make an offer, you're going to include earnest money, also called a good faith deposit. This shows the seller that you're serious. Now, what is earnest money? Well, earnest money is a deposit that you make when your offer is accepted. It's typically held in an escrow account by a title company or attorney, depending on what state you live in. And eventually it gets applied to your down payment or closing costs at closing. Think of it as kind of skin in the game. It proves that you're committed and not just making frivolous offers. So how much should you offer? It's a great question. I'll give you some typical amounts, but everything's negotiable. Standard market, 1 to 2% of the purchase price, typically about 1. In competitive markets, 2 to 3% of the purchase price, typically 2. In very hot markets, it can go as far as 3 to 5% of the purchase price, but it's all negotiable. I've gotten contracts done with $500 earnest money, including one that I did myself for me. Why does earnest money matter? Well, large earnest money deposits make your offer more attractive because it shows financial capabilities. It demonstrates commitment, and the seller knows that you have more to lose if you walk away without a valid reason. However, don't overextend yourself. You need to have this money available immediately when the offer is accepted. Your lender is also going to need to see that these funds have been paid, and they're going to need to see how they were paid. So if you wired it, they're going to need the wire receipt. If you paid with a cashier's check, they're going to need a copy of that check, so on and so forth. Now, you'll typically have 1 to 3 days after the offer is accepted to deliver the earnest money to the escrow holder, which is the title company or the attorney. Your agent can coordinate this. You'll usually wire the funds or bring a cashier's check. Some title companies use apps called Zochem, where you can just make the deposit, and depending on the amount, like if it's $500, they may even accept a personal check. Many people ask me if it is refundable. That is a great question, and the answer depends on the contingencies in your contract. It's refundable if you back out during the inspection period with an inspection contingency. It's refundable if the appraisal comes back low and you can't reach an agreement if you have an appraisal contingency. You can't secure financing as long as you have the financing contingency. And if there's any other contingency in your contract that isn't satisfied, then you get the money back. It is not refundable if you stub your toe and you want to walk away from the house. You back out after all contingencies are removed. That's called going hard. If you back out for reasons not covered by contingencies, such as buyer remorse, you found another house, etc., you breach the contract, and because of that breach, the seller keeps the earnest money as compensation for damages for taking their house off the market. So how can you protect your earnest money? Only remove contingencies when you're absolutely sure you want to proceed. Don't miss deadlines for inspections, appraisals, or financing. Read your contract carefully to understand what makes you lose your deposit, and work closely with your agent to stay on track. Now, all this is guidance. None of this is legal advice, so don't take it as legal advice. If you have legal questions, make sure you consult an attorney. Now, here's a special note on going hard. In very competitive markets, some buyers often go hard immediately, meaning they put all their earnest money at risk from day one. All the chips are in, with no contingencies. This is extremely risky and should only be done if you're paying cash, you're waiving an inspection, and you're absolutely certain about this property. Earnest money protects the seller and it shows your commitment. Offer enough to be competitive, but make sure you have the cash available to understand the conditions under which you could lose it. Now, let's start talking a little bit more in depth about contingencies. Contingencies are conditions that must be met for the sale to go through. They protect you from being forced to buy a house with problems or losing your earnest money if things go wrong. In a buyer's market, you'll include multiple contingencies. In a seller's market, you might only have one, right? You got to limit them to stay competitive. Let's break down each one of them, okay? Inspection contingency. We'll start with that one. So what is an inspection contingency? Well, this gives you the right to have the home professionally inspected and to negotiate repairs, credits, or even cancel the contract if major issues happen to be found. The typical timeline, 7 to 10 days to complete the inspection and respond. How does it work? You hire a licensed home inspector. The inspections usually cost $300 to $600, but it all depends on the size of the home. The inspector examines the home top to bottom, and you receive a detailed report of all issues found, and you can then request repairs, request a price drop, request credit at closing. You can cancel the contract, and if you do all of that, you get your earnest money back as long as you're still within that contingency period. So why is this critical? The inspection might reveal several things. It may show you have major structural issues. There could be roof problems. The HVAC system could be failing. You could have plumbing and electrical issues. There could be mold or pest infestations. There could be other safety hazards. These could cost tens of thousands of dollars to repair. Now, when to waive the inspection contingency? Only waive it in extreme competitive situations. Only if you're willing to accept the home as is, and only if you've done extensive due diligence yourself. Consider getting a pre-inspection before making the offer if possible. You need to make sure that you're protecting yourself the best you can. Now, here is a warning. Waiving the inspection is risky, and you could end up with massive unexpected repair bills. So you need to do it with extreme caution. Now, let's talk about the appraisal contingency. So what is an appraisal contingency? Well, just like the inspection process, this one protects you if the home doesn't appraise for the agreed upon purchase price. If the appraisal comes in low, you can renegotiate or cancel the contract. Here's how it works. Your lender is going to order an appraisal. You're going to typically pay between $400 and $600, and a licensed appraiser evaluates the home. The appraiser determines the home's market value, and if the appraisal is below the purchase price, you have options. You can renegotiate the contract to get the price down. You can make up the difference in cash. The lender will only loan based off the appreciated the appraised value. You can cancel the contract and get your earnest money back as well. So here's an example. You buy a house for $400. It appraises for $385. There's a $15,000 gap. Your options: ask the seller to reduce the price to $385,000. You can bring an extra $15,000 in cash. You can meet in the middle. Seller reduces the price by $7,500 and you bring $7,500, or you can cancel the contract, or anything in between. It's all negotiable. So why is this important? Well, it prevents you from overpaying. It prevents you from owing more than what the home is worth. And your lender's going to require it anyway. Now, here's when you can waive the appraisal contingency. When you have extra cash reserves and are willing to cover any gap that you're confident that the home will appraise, right? Based off of your CMA. You could do it in extremely competitive markets. When you're paying cash, there's no lender, so there's no required appraisal, but you should still get one. Now keep in mind that even if you waive the appraisal contingency, your lender will still require an appraisal. You're just agreeing to cover any gap or lose your earnest money if you back out. Next is financing contingencies. This protects you if you cannot secure a mortgage. This is very important. If your loan falls through, you can cancel the contract and get your earnest money back. Now, the typical timeline for these contingencies is between 21 and 30 days. This is how they work. You apply for a mortgage. The lender processes your application. The underwriter reviews everything. If approved, contingency is satisfied and you proceed. If it's denied, you can cancel your contract without penalty. Now, here are some reasons that loans may be denied. Job loss or income change. Don't quit your job right before while you're doing this process. Don't quit your job, no matter how much you hate it. Your credit score drops, so don't make big purchases during this time. This includes co-signing a loan for someone. The property doesn't meet lender requirements. There are title issues discovered. Your debt-to-income ratio changes. There's a lot. Why is it important? Well, life happens. You can get a job change. You can get fired or laid off. Financial situations shift. That prevent you from, losing your earnest money. If they do, that's why you have this contingency in there. Now, here's when to waive it. When you're paying cash, when you're extremely confident in your finances, right? But it's still risky. In a very competitive situations, you might want to do it, but have a backup plan. Now, here's a warning. Waiving financing contingencies mean if your loan is denied, you lose your earnest money. Only do this if you're 100% certain or you have cash reserves to close anyway. Now, let's talk about a home sale contingency. What is a home sale contingency? Well, let's want to say you got to sell a house in order to buy this one. This makes your offer contingent upon selling that house. If your home doesn't sell, you can cancel the contract. So how does it work? Well, you make an offer, right? And you can make it contingent upon selling your current home. You typically include a timeline such as buyer's home must be sold within 60 days. If your home sells, you proceed with purchasing the new home. If your home doesn't sell, you can cancel without a penalty. Now, here's why sellers don't like it, and I'm going to talk to you about how you can make it a little bit better. It creates uncertainty for them. They have to take their home off the market while waiting. Many sellers will reject offers with this contingency, or they'll require a kick-out clause. Now, a kick-out clause is kind of an escape clause. Every state calls it something different. But it allows the seller to continue marketing the home. If they receive another offer without a home sale contingency, you have 24 to 72 hours to remove the contingency or lose the home based off of the contract. This is the compromise that makes home sale contingencies more acceptable to sellers. So here's when you use it. When you must sell your current home to afford the new home. When you're in a buyer's market where sellers have less leverage. Now here's when to avoid it. If you're in competitive markets, you'll likely lose to offers without this contingency. And when you can carry two mortgages temporarily, and when you can sell your current home first, then buy. Now here is an alternative strategy. Sell your current home first, then rent back your home from the buyer while you house hunt. Make a non-contingent offer on your new home. Now, another one is this, title contingencies. Now, here's what a title contingency is. It ensures the seller has clear marketable title and the property can legally transfer to you. Here's how this works. The title company, they're going to do their title search. They're going to search for liens, judgments, claims against the property, all kinds of stuff. And then if issues are found, they're called clouds. Now, the seller must resolve these clouds before closing. If the seller cannot resolve them, you can cancel the contract. Here are some common title issues or clouds. Unpaid property taxes, outstanding mortgages or home equity loans, a mechanic's lien for unpaid contractors, boundary disputes, easements or restrictions, divorce decrees, estate or probate issues. So why it's standard? This is typically included in all contracts as standard protection. I guess like built into it by the promulgating company, right? Your lender requires clear title, and you don't want to buy a house with legal problems, right? This is almost never waived because it protects both parties. Next, we're going to talk about HOA and condo contingencies and what they are. They give you time to review HOA or condo association documents and the financials, and you can cancel if you don't like what you find. Typical timeline, 5 to 10 days to review the documents from once they're received. Now, what you review, the codes, covenants, and restrictions are also called the CCRs, okay? You want to look at the financial statements. You want to look at meeting minutes. You want to look at the budget and reserve funds. You want to see when the last special assessment was planned and if they have any that are planned or ongoing. You want to look at litigation insurance coverage. You can cancel if HOA fees are higher than disclosed. The association is in poor financial health. Rules are too restrictive for your needs, but you need to put those needs in the contract. Major special assessments and planned associations is involved, or the association is involved in the lawsuit. So why does this matter? HOA issues can cost you thousands or make living there miserable. Better to find out before you're committed. Now here's some other common contingencies. Insurance contingency. It protects you if you can't get homeowners insurance. Not very rare, but it can be common in flood zones, fire zones, or high-risk areas. Well and septic contingencies. For properties with private wells or septic systems, it ensures that they're functioning properly. Radon contingency allows you to test for radon and require mitigation if levels are high. Well, if your house was built before 1978, you can get a lead-based paint contingency for those homes. It gives you time to test for lead paint. Regardless, don't put paint chips in your mouth. Now, you can get a survey contingency. It ensures property boundaries are accurate and no encroachments exist. Now, you also have a final walkthrough contingency. It gives you the right to walk through the property 24 to 48 hours before closing to ensure that it is in the agreed upon condition. So how many contingencies should you include? We just listed like 8 of them, right? In a buyer's market, include every protection you want, okay? In a balanced market, include the standard ones: inspection, appraisal, financing. In a seller's market, do the minimum necessary to protect yourself while being strategic. Your agent will help you decide which contingencies to include based off the specific property type, the specific market conditions, and your risk tolerance. Your competitive situation and property type and condition will all play a factor into it as well. Now, contingencies are your protection, so don't waive them lightly. Every contingency you remove increases your risk some. Make strategic decisions, not emotional ones. Next, we're going to discuss requesting repairs and seller's concessions. Here's where you can make up a lot of money as well, or make sure that you're getting out of a house that's too bad. So after the inspections, you're going to want to negotiate repairs and concessions, and here's how this works and what you need to know. First, let's go over what seller's concessions are. Seller concessions are when a seller agrees to contribute money towards your closing costs or other expenses. There are several different types of concessions. You have closing cost credits. This is where a seller agrees to pay a portion of your closing cost. It reduces the cash that you need to bring at closing. So for example, the seller is providing you $5,000 credit towards buyer's closing costs. This reduces your cost by $5,000, but you still have to pay for the repairs out of pocket when you move in, right? Next is a rate buy down. This is where the seller pays points to reduce your interest rate. By doing this, it lowers your monthly payments. So for example, a seller to pay 1 point or $4,000 to buy down the buyer's rate. Your rate goes from say 6.5 to 6.25. Okay, it's usually about 1%. Next topic is prepaid items. You can ask the seller to pay for property taxes, HOA dues, or insurance. For example, the seller is to pay the first year of the HOA dues. Next is the home warranty. It is quite common to ask a seller to purchase a home warranty policy for you. This helps cover repairs to major systems for 1 year and typically costs between $400 and $700. Next is appliances and furnishings. You can ask the seller to include appliances, fixtures, or furniture. So for example, you can ask in the contract that the seller leave the refrigerator, the washer, the dryer, the barbecue grill, the drapes, whatever, right? You can ask them to do it. They don't have to, but you can ask it. Let's talk about repair credits. So instead of making repairs, seller gives you cash to handle it yourself, often preferred by buyers who want to choose their own contractors or if they themselves are handy. So how do these concessions benefit you? They reduce the cash you need to bring to closing. If you're tight on cash, concessions reduce your out-of-pocket expenses, but it still leaves you on the hook for the repairs. Another benefit is you control the repairs. A credit lets you hire your contractors and ensures quality work. There could be some tax and loan benefits. Concessions rolled into your loan may be tax deductible, but first, consult your tax advisor for your specific situation, because I'm not a CPA and this isn't tax advice. And you can spread the cost over 30 years instead of paying up front. It can also allow you to use it as a way to negotiate a price reduction alternative. So in some cases, concessions are better than a price reduction for financing purposes. Something to keep in mind, though, is that there are limits on what the seller can give you in concessions. For conventional loans, they allow 3% if you're putting less than 10% down, 6% with 10 to 25% down, and 9% with more than 25% down. FHA loans allow 6%, VA loans allow 4%, and USDA loans allow 6%. So here's an example. You have a $400,000 purchase price with a conventional loan and you're putting 10% down. Your maximum contribution and seller concessions allowed would be $24,000. Now let's talk about requesting repairs after your inspection. So after your inspection, you'll typically submit a repair request. Here's how to approach it strategically. Let's look at what to request, okay? You want to look for major safety issues such as electrical hazards, structural problems, roof leaks, HVAC failures, plumbing issues, mold and pest infestations, things like that, right? Then you want to look at major systems. Are they near its end of life cycle, like a roof? Is it going to be needing to be replaced within 1 to 2 years? Is the water heater about to fail? Is the HVAC system 20 years old? Then there are code violations. Are they missing GFCIs, improper venting, and other safety code issues? Now keep in mind that codes change all the time. Just because something isn't to code today doesn't mean it's not working as intended. It's important to ask your inspector more information about any code violations and their operating abilities. Also, it is important to know what not to request, such as cosmetic issues, minor wear and tear, things disclosed or visible during showings, things you knew about, okay? The seller will likely reject nitpicky requests, and then you're going to damage any kind of negotiations that you would have had with them. Here is how to structure a repair request. Option number 1, request specific repairs. You put it like this. Seller to repair the roof leak, replace the water heater, and bring electrical to code per the inspection report. Now here's some pros. You know exactly what will be done, and here's the cons. You don't control the quality, contractor of choice, or timing. Option 2, request a credit. Seller to provide $8,000 credit at closing for buyer to address items in inspection report. The pro, you control repairs, choose contractors, and it can roll it into your loan. The cons, you have to manage the repairs yourself, and if you don't get quotes, you could overrun on cost. Option number 3, request a price reduction. Buyer requests an $8,000 price reduction to reflect needed repairs. The pro, you get lowers your loan amount, reduces your overall interest paid, and may reduce property taxes. Con, it reduces sellers' net proceeds and may be less appealing to them. Option number 4, you can do a combination. Seller to repair roof leak must be done before closing and provide $3,000 credit for buyer to address remaining items. The pros for this, major issues are fixed and you can handle the rest. Con, more complex negotiating and you may overrun on your costs if you did not get a quote first. Now let's talk about your negotiation strategy, because negotiation strategy is very important. You want to prioritize your requests by category. Have a must-have safety issues, major systems. A nice-to-have, minor repairs, cosmetic items. Focus on the must-haves. You're more likely to get an agreement from the seller with that. It's rare sellers won't fix something that can or is causing flood, blood, fire, or death. Right? This is what I use with my buyers and my sellers when negotiating repairs. Is it or can it cause flood? That's water. Blood, safety. Fire, safety. Or death, safety, right? When you make it about this, you tend to get better responses from the sellers. Get your estimates before requesting credits, right? You want to get your contractor estimates for repair costs to help justify your request with the data, right? That way it's not emotion, it's not a random number. Here it is. Make sure to be reasonable. Don't ask for everything in the inspection report. Focus on legit issues. Remember, you saw the home before making an offer. Consider the market. In a seller's market, you'll get less. Focus on critical items only. In a buyer's market, you have more leverage and can ask for more. Let's take a look at some seller's response options. They can accept, right? And that's where the seller agrees to do all of your requests. That's rare. They can counter, right? And the seller agrees to some, but not all. They can reject. Seller refuses and says, take it or leave it, as is. I find if you ask too much, the seller will consider it unreasonable and they will tell you to try again or completely burn the bridge, and they would rather risk putting it back on market rather than work with you. If sellers refuse everything, you have options within your contingency period. You can accept the home as is and proceed on your own, or you can cancel the contract and get your earnest money back and get back to the drawing board. You may want to counter again with reduced request or request a price reduction if they won't do the repairs. It's important, though, to know when to walk away, and here are some key times on when to walk away. If you find major undisclosed issues, if the seller refuses to address safety hazards, if repair costs exceed your budget, and if you're no longer confident in the home. Don't feel pressured to proceed with a home that has serious issues just because you're under contract. Repairs and concessions are a normal part of the negotiation. Be strategic, be reasonable, and focus on issues that truly matter. Your agent will guide you through this process based on market norms and the specific situation you find yourself in. Now let's dive into the closing timeline. The closing timeline is when you need to close on the property. You take ownership and complete the purchase. Now, standard closing timelines for cash buyers are 7 to 14 days. The longest part about the transaction is the inspection timeline. Conventional loans usually need 30 to 45 days. FHA loans are the same, about 30 to 45 days. VA loans, they are too the same. They need about 30 to 45 days, but I've done them as fast as 23. USDA loans, though, you're going to need 30 to 60 days. They take a little bit longer. Now, here are some factors that affect your timeline. Lender processing speeds are the biggest factor. Some lenders are faster than others. It's important to ask this question when you're interviewing lenders. Talk to them about their processing times. Let's look at market conditions and how they impact. In the busy seasons, appraisers and inspectors, they can get backed up. Now, property condition can also affect it. Issues discovered during the inspection that you need resolution on. You can't close until all the repairs are done. Title issues, well, they can cause delays as well. If there's problems with the title that need to be cleared before closing, that will cause a delay. Seller's timeline may adjust or is part of the negotiations. The seller might need more time to move out due to their purchase of their new home. They may be asking you for a lease back too. You never know. It's important to have flexibility on your timeline. Accommodate the seller when possible. If seller needs 60 days, offering flexibility can make your offer more attractive. If the seller wants a quick close, being able to close within 21 days can win you the house as well. Don't agree to a timeline you can't meet. Don't agree to close before financing contingency period ends. Don't agree to let sellers remain in the home after closing without a formal rent back agreement. Now let's talk more about seller rent backs. Sometimes sellers need to stay in the house after closing. This is called a rent back or a lease back. And here's how it works. You close. You take ownership of the property. The seller then becomes a tenant for a specified period, usually a few days to maybe a couple weeks. The seller pays you daily rent, which is typically equal to your daily mortgage payment, sometimes a little bit more. You require a security deposit and a formal signed agreement is signed. Why do sellers request this? Well, they may need time to move. They're waiting for their new home to be ready. They want to close but aren't ready to leave. Now here are the risk to you when you do this. If the seller damages the property, it's on you. The seller refuses to leave. Now it's an eviction process. You can't move in when you planned. Now here's how you can protect yourself. Require adequate security deposit. Have daily rent, and it should cover all of your expenses, maybe a little extra. Include penalties for overstaying. Get it in writing as part of your contract, and require that they have renter's insurance. Now make sure to keep in mind that you choose a closing timeline that works for both parties, but ensure that you can meet your deadlines and protect yourself if things go wrong. Now let's talk about negotiations, counter offers, and walking away. Rarely does a seller accept your first offer without any changes. Let's talk about how negotiations work and when you should walk away. Understanding counter offers and how to respond. Right? A counter offer is when the seller responds to your offer with different terms. This is completely normal and expected. Here's what sellers can counter. They can counter the price. We accept your offer, but at $410,000 instead of $400,000. They can counter the closing date. We need 60 days, not 30 days. They can counter contingencies. We'll accept, but you have to waive the inspection contingency. They can also do repairs and concessions. We won't provide the $5,000 credit you requested. They can do personal property. We're taking the chandelier and the appliances. You can't have none of them. They can also come back with any combination of them. It's all negotiable. Everything is negotiable. Now here is how to respond to a counteroffer. You have three options, right? Just keeping it simple. Option one, you can accept it. Sign the counteroffer and have your binding contract sent off. No further negotiations. Option number two, you can reject it. Just walk away from the deal entirely. Your earnest money is not at risk. You haven't accepted anything yet. And option number three, you can always counter, right? You can counter their counter. You can propose your own changes. This continues the negotiations. Now, here is a counter offer strategy. Let's look at evaluating the gaps. First, let's talk about the price gap. Your offer was $400,000. They countered at $415,000. That gap is $15,000. Is the gap reasonable to split? If so, maybe you meet in the middle at $407,500. Then there is the term gap. You wanted 45 days to close. The seller wants 60 days to close. Can you accommodate? Then you have the contingency gap. The seller wants you to waive inspections. So can you do a pre-inspection instead? The main thing is not take it personally. It's all negotiations. It's all business. This is business. It's not personal. The seller is trying to get the best deal for them, just like you're trying to get the best deal for you. Stay calm and negotiate rationally. You need to prioritize what matters the most. Rank your priorities, right? You got pricing, closing date, inspection contingency, repairs. Be willing to concede on lower priorities to win on higher priorities. Here's a counter example that you can use. For example, your offer, $400,000. Close in 30 days. Inspection, yes. Appraisal, yes. Seller concessions, $5,000. Now the seller, they come back with a counter. We'll give you $415,000, or we want $415,000. We want 60 days. You can have your inspection, you can have your appraisal, but we're not giving you any seller's concessions. Well, you can counter. Well, I'll do it, but I'm going to go to $407,500. We'll meet in the middle. We'll compromise at 45 days. I want the inspections. That's non-negotiable. Appraisal, yes, non-negotiable. Seller's concession, that split the difference, $2,500. This shows willingness to compromise while standing firm on your non-negotiables. So how many rounds of negotiations can you see? Typically, 1 to 3 rounds is normal. More than 5 rounds, someone is probably being unreasonable. It's taking me a couple days back and forth to do some negotiations to make things work. If negotiations are taking too long, it might be a signal that you're too far apart on price, or the seller really isn't motivated to sell, or you're dealing with a difficult seller. Just know the deal might not be meant to be. Communication is key during these negotiations, and reasonable acts as well, right? You don't want to lose a deal over a $500 item. Now, your agent is going to be handling the strategy, the communication, and everything like that, okay? But you need to be clear about your absolute maximum price, your non-negotiable terms, your willingness to compromise, and your timeline for making decisions. What if multiple buyers are negotiating? Well, in a multiple offer situation, the seller is typically presented all offers and they choose the best one or ask specific buyers to resubmit their highest and best. So here's what to do if asked for your highest and your best. This is typically your final shot. Submit your absolute best offer that you have. Don't hold back thinking that there will be another round if you lose. At least you know that you tried your best if it didn't work. Keep in mind that counter offers are normal. Stay calm, be strategic, and know your limits. Work closely with your real estate agent to navigate this back and forth professionally, okay? Always remain professional. When you walk away, sometimes the best negotiation move is to walk away. Here's how you know when to do it. Walk away if the seller is unreasonable. Countering with unrealistic prices, refusing to negotiate at all, demanding you waive all protection, being hostile or difficult. And you'll likely face problems throughout the transaction if they're like that, okay? Walk away if the home has major issues. The inspection reveals serious structural problems, might be an indicator, right? Cost of repairs exceed your budget. The seller refuses to address safety issues. You're no longer comfortable with the home's condition. Those are all key indicators to leave. The deal no longer makes financial sense, right? If the appraisal comes in low and the seller won't budge. Your financial situation has changed. You found a better option. The monthly payment would stretch you too thin. Your gut says no. You've lost your excitement about the home, right? You're feeling pressured or you're stressed. Something feels wrong even if you can't pinpoint it. You're only proceeding because you're tired of searching. These are all ways or things to think about to walk away, right? If the seller is hiding something, right? Evasive answers about property history, refusal to provide disclosures, won't allow proper inspection access, history of failed deals. Those are all red flags. If you have multiple competing priorities that aren't being met, if the seller won't meet your price and won't make repairs and won't accommodate your timeline and is demanding you waive contingencies, if too many concessions are being required, right? It's another way. Now let's talk about how to walk away if you want to walk away. If you're during your negotiations, so before your offer is accepted, simply throw up some deuces, right? Tell your agent you're no longer interested. There's no penalty, no earnest money was at risk. Move on to the next property. If it's during your contingency period, exercise your contingencies. If you're using your inspection contingency to do so, based on inspection findings, buyer elects to terminate is one way that you can word it. Now, appraisal contingency. If the appraisal came in low, buyer elects to terminate, right? Financing contingency. Buyer unable to secure financing. You get your earnest money back on all of these as long as you're within those contingencies. There's no penalty. If you do it after contingencies are removed, Lord help you, right? This is serious. You'll lose your earnest money unless seller breaches the contract. You have another valid contractual reason, right? Only remove contingencies when you're 100% committed. Don't let emotions drive you. Okay? They will trap you. There is a thing that's called the sunk cost fallacy. Buyers will say, well, we've already spent $1,000 on inspections and appraisals, so we have to go through with it. That's wrong. That $1,000 is gone regardless. Don't throw away $400,000 on a bad decision. Now let's talk about FOMO, the fear of missing out. I love doing this when it works for my client, but I hate it when it's done to them. So what if we don't find another house, right? You will. There are always more homes. Don't settle for the wrong one. You may feel pressure from others. Oh, my agent's going to be mad if we back out. No, we won't. A good agent wants you to make the right decision, not just close a deal. Oh, my parents are pushing me towards buying this house. Well, although parents do their best, at least they think they do their best to be helpful, the ultimate decision on where you live and where you spend your money, well, it rests with you and you alone. Now, when walking away is the right move, you want to do it if well, I've seen buyers, walk away and then they find a better house a couple weeks later. They realize that they weren't actually ready to buy. Negotiate better on the next house because they weren't desperate. They also know that walking away can be empowering and smart. So don't fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy or fear of missing out. If the deal isn't right, walk away. Your future self will thank you for it. Now let's talk about escalation clauses. It's imperative that you talk to your advisor about them. Not all states allow escalation clauses. So you don't want to start doing stuff because you saw it on this video without knowing what you're doing and if you can do it, okay? An escalation clause can help you win in a competitive situation without drastically overpaying. Let's talk about how they work. So what is an escalation clause? Great question. An escalation clause automatically increases your offer to beat competing offers up to a maximum price that you specify. Here's an example. You offer $400,000 on 123 Smith Street. Here's your escalation clause. Buyer will increase offer by $2,000 above any competing offer up to a maximum of $425,000. If another buyer offers $410,000, your offer automatically becomes $412,000. If another buyer offers $420,000, well, your offer automatically becomes $422,000. If another offer comes in at $430,000, your offer maxes out at $425,000. So how make this sound, right? You put it together and buyer offers $400,000 and will escalate purchase price by $2,000 over any competing offer up to a maximum of $425,000. Sellers must provide proof of competing offer. Now, here are the key components of the escalation clause. You have your base offer. That's your starting price, okay? Then you have your escalation increments. How much will you beat others by? It's typically between $1,000 and $5,000, okay? Don't go down in the hundreds. Your maximum price is the next one, right? This is the highest that you'll go. You always require proof, right? Sellers must show you the competing offer. So here's a pro for escalation clauses. You stay competitive, right? You automatically beat the other offers. You don't overpay. You only pay what's necessary to win. You show flexibility. It demonstrates willingness to negotiate. You can win in multiple offers as it gives you an edge over fixed price offers. Now here are some cons of the escalation clause. It renders your max, it reveals your max. Sellers know the most that you will pay. Triggers may be manipulated. The seller's friend could submit higher offers just to trigger the escalation clause. It doesn't guarantee acceptance, right? The seller can still choose another offer with fewer contingencies. And it can get expensive, as you might end up paying more than what you wanted. When to use an escalation clause? This is important. You want to use it when multiple offers are expected in hot markets where bidding wars are common. You really want the house, right? It's your top choice and you're willing to stretch your budget. You're financially comfortable. You can afford up to your maximum. Okay? You're competing on price and other terms, right? Such as contingencies, timeline, and trying to be competitive. When not to use one. Okay, please don't use one if you can use one for this. You're the only offer. All right, there's no competition. There's no need to escalate. Don't use it when you are at your absolute max. If your initial offer is your limit, you have nowhere to go anyway. When the seller seems dishonest, there's also a risk of manipulation. You're already offering above asking. You might not need it. Now let's discuss how to protect yourself. You got to require proof. Seller must provide a copy of the competing offer showing price and terms. You set a reasonable max. All right? Don't go beyond what you can afford or what the home is worth. You need to set smart increments. $1,000 to $2,000 is typical. Don't use $10 or $100, it looks desperate. Include your other terms, right? Clarify that all other terms of your offer remain the same. Here are some escalation clause alternatives if your state doesn't allow them. The highest and best request, right? Instead of escalation clause, seller asks all buyers to submit their highest and best offer by a specific date and time. You then decide your maximum and submit once. What about appraisal gap coverages? You can offer to cover any gap between purchase price and appraisal value up to a certain limit. This can be more appealing than the escalation clause. For example, buyer will cover appraisal gap up to $20,000. This lets the seller know that they have a cushion between the contract price and the appraisal. This is really good if they are overpricing the house. Now, you need to present a strong, clean offer. Sometimes a straightforward offer, well, it's the best, right? With great terms, it can beat complicated escalation clauses. So here's an example. Offer at asking price, large earnest money deposit, quick close, waive minor contingencies. This may look more attractive regardless of another offer. Escalation clauses can be powerful tools in competitive situations, but they are not always the answer. Use them strategically. Protect yourself with proof, requirements, and don't expect or don't exceed what you can afford or what the home is really worth. Now let's talk about writing a personal letter to the seller. It does have some pros, it does have some cons. So in emotional markets, buyers sometimes, well, they'll write personal letters to sellers hoping to create a connection and win the deal. However, this practice is increasingly controversial and risky. So what is a personal letter? Well, it is a letter from you to the seller sharing why you love the home. It kind of gives you a personal story, how you envision the home and your life there, your family situation, your values, and your background. The goal is to make some kind of an emotional connection and convince the seller that you're the right buyer for the home. I'm going to give you the pros. It can create an emotional connection. I've seen it happen. Sellers sometimes choose offers based off of who they want to live in their homes, right? Especially if they've lived there for decades and have a lot of emotional attachment to that property. Now, it can differentiate your offer, right? In multiple offer situations where prices are similar, a letter might tip the scale. Sellers appreciate knowing their home will be loved. Home sellers, they care more about, well, some home sellers may care more about who buys their home than squeezing out every little penny. Right? Has it worked for some buyers? It has. There are success stories for buyers winning deals due to personal letters. I once had a client, their offer was accepted because my client rides a Harley and saw a Harley in the garage, and they wrote a letter talking about how he could envision seeing his Harley in the garage and so on and so forth. Right? And that struck and our offer got accepted. Now here are some cons, and this is critical. Fair housing concerns need to be addressed. Fair housing laws, well, they prohibit discrimination based off of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, disability, right? Those kind of things. Personal letters can often reveal protected class information. So photos of your family. Well, guess what? Surprise, you reveal your race, family status, maybe even handicap. They mention of your church or faith reveals your religion. Mention of children or pregnancy reveal your family status. Mention of disabilities or accommodations needed. So on and so forth. If a seller rejects your offer after reading your letter, they could be accused of discrimination based on your protected class status. Many listing agents, including myself, we kind of refuse letters or they limit them, right, to protect their sellers from fair housing liability. Many agents instruct sellers not to read personal letters or to refuse forwarding them to the sellers. This is becoming increasingly common and is recommended by many states and national real estate associations. They can backfire. Your letter might reveal something that turns the seller off. The seller may not want a family with young kids. The seller might have some biases, conscious or unconscious, that work against you. It doesn't address what really matters. Guess what really matters, right? Price, the contingencies, that's what matters. Sellers care more about that and the certainty of closing. A letter doesn't change these fundamentals. What do they do instead, or what to do instead? You can write a letter, right? But you can focus on making your strong offer, right? Be competitive with the pricing, strong earnest money deposits, minimal contingencies if you're comfortable, flexible closing times, quick response times, clean, simple offers. But if you still want to try a letter, use caution. Do not include photos of yourself or your family. Do not include any mention of race, ethnicity, or national origin. Don't include any mention of religion or faith, or any mention of children or family status, any mention of disability or health conditions, any reference to potential or to protected classes. Do include general appreciation for the home's features, why the home's specific characteristics appeal to you, not you personally. Right? Your willingness to care for the home, your respect for the home's history, and to make sure that it is that letter is professional and in a respectful tone. Example of what not to write. Okay, don't do this. Dear sellers, we're the Smith family, John, Sarah, and our 3 beautiful children, Emma, who's 5, Jake, who's 3, and baby Sophie, right? We attend Grace Community Church and love this neighborhood because of the great schools. My wife has been battling cancer, and we need a single-story home for accessibility. We're a mixed-race family, and we love the diversity of this neighborhood. Here's a photo of us in front of your home. This letter violates nearly every fair housing concern possible, so don't do it. Here's an example of what to write if you insist. Dear sellers, thank you for the opportunity to submit an offer on your home. We appreciate the care that you've taken in maintaining the property and can see the thoughtful processes that you've put into the home with the landscaping and the updates. The layout and features of this home align well with our needs, and we would be honored to carry forward the legacy of care that you have established. We're committed to making a smooth transaction and respecting your timeline. We look forward to the possibility of making this house our home. Sincerely, the Smith family. This is neutral. It doesn't reveal anything about a protected class or anything about it. It just focuses on the home. Best practice, don't write a letter at all. Now let's talk about once your offer is accepted. You are under contract. Yay! Congratulations, right? Your offer is accepted. Now the real work begins. You're officially under contract, and there's a lot to do to get to the closing table. So here is what happens when your offer is accepted. The moment your offer is accepted or you agree to the final terms, you have a binding contract. Here's what happens immediately. You're now in the under contract or pending period. Each state calls it something different. Here in Texas, we call it the option period. The home is changed from an active status to a feasibility status, and you've committed to buying unless a contingency allows you out. Both parties must fulfill their obligations in the contract now. Your immediate first steps are this. 1, you have to deliver the earnest money. Okay, you got to do that between 1 and 3 days. You got to take it to the escrow officer, right? Whether it's the title company or the attorney, depending on your state. Now, here's how you can deliver the funds. We talked about it before. Wire them. That's the most common. Cashier's checks. Depending on the amount, you may accept a personal check, right? Some title companies, they use apps as well. Okay, here in Texas, my title company, they use an app called Zocum. Your agent will provide wiring instructions or delivery address. Now, here is an important tip. Wire fraud is common. Call your agent or the title company directly using a phone number that you looked up independently, not one from an email, to verify that the wiring instructions are correct before you start sending money. Once delivered, make sure you get a receipt confirming the earnest money was received and is being held in escrow. Deliver feasibility money, right? In some states, some contracts require an additional deposit separate from earnest money called feasibility money, option money, or due diligence money. Here in Texas, we call it an option fee. Okay, This is non-refundable and pays you, or it's non-refundable and pays for your right to inspect and evaluate the property during the contingency period. A typical amount is about $10 a day, so somewhere between $100 and $500 would be reasonable, depending on your state. This is separate from the earnest money and may or may not apply to your purchase price depending on how the contract is written. Now, provide a copy of the contract to your lender immediately. Your lender needs a signed contract to order the appraisal, begin underwriting processes, and verify the property details as well as finalizing your loan terms. You can email it or upload it to the same day that you get it accepted. Contact your lender within 24 hours to confirm that they received the contract. Verify the timeline for appraisal and loan processing and provide any additional documentation that they need and confirm your closing date is achievable. Now, it's really important to have done that before putting in your offer. Now, don't assume everything is on track. Stay proactive, right? There's going to be lulls during this time. Don't get complacent. Next is to hire a home inspector and have the inspection done within 1 to 3 days. Your inspection period starts immediately, typically 7 to 10 days total. You'll need to find a licensed home inspector. You can reach out to your agent and ask them if they have any recommendations, but ultimately you get to choose who you hire. Schedule the inspection ASAP. Inspectors book up quickly, especially during the typical buying season. Plan to attend the inspection. This is highly recommended. Come in about the last hour of the inspection. Right? And inspections, they cost about $300 to $600, depending on the home size and location and any other things you would like to get inspected, like a pool, sprinklers, pests, so on and so forth. Notify your insurance agent. You'll need homeowners insurance to close, and the lender needs the amounts. Start the process by getting quotes from multiple insurance companies unless you have your favorite one. Now, you want to compare coverage and cost. Don't look at just the price, because if one's significantly lower than the other, they're cutting it from somewhere. Right? Make sure you provide them the property details. They're going to want to know about the roof, the siding of the house. Your lender will require proof of insurance before closing. You want to schedule the appraisal. Right? You want to have this done with the lender. They're going to take care of everything, but you want to confirm that it has been scheduled. Don't order it through, though, until you've negotiated all your repairs. It would suck to pay $600 for an appraisal 2 days before you back out of the contract because of a condition. All right? You won't be present for the appraisal. Only the appraiser, the listing agent may be there, and the seller need to be there, not you. Review the title commitment when you get it received from the title company. The title company will send you a preliminary title report, also called a title commitment. Review it. Look for liens, judgments, easement restrictions, HOA issues, condo issues. Make sure the legal description is accurate. Your agent or your attorney will help you review this. Next, you want to secure your homeowner's insurance. So after you got your quotes, choose a policy and provide proof to the lender. Usually do this 1 week before closing. Okay? The insurance company will create a binder for you. Stay in close contact with your agent and your lender. You'll have questions and deadlines that will be approaching, and as always, issues might arise. Do not go silent. All right, stay engaged throughout the entire process. Your agent will be working in the background with contingencies, but during this time, most communication will happen with the lender. Next, you want to look at your timeline and look for important dates for contingencies. These are important, right? You don't want to miss one. Your contract has specific deadlines for each contingency. Missing these deadlines can cost you earnest money or your right to cancel, so make sure to stay on top of them. Now, in a typical contract, timelines usually have 30 to 45 day closings. Day 1 through 3, that's the delivery of the earnest money and feasibility money if applicable. Day 1, provide contract to the lender, order your home inspection. Days 3 through 7, you're completing the home inspection, you're getting quotes, you're negotiating repairs, right? Days 7 through 10, you're continuing the inspection objection deadlines and things like that. You must request repairs, credits, or cancel by the date of the contingency expiring. If you do nothing, you accept the house as is. Days 7 through 10, right? The inspection resolution deadlines. Sellers are going to be responding to your request. You negotiate repairs or credits. You either agree or you terminate the contract. Day 17 to 21 is the appraisal time frame. That's when it's getting completed. Again, order it after your feasibility time. Lenders order these usually around the day 7 or 10, but again, don't pay for something unless you know you're going to have it. Day 21 through 30 is your financing contingency deadline. You must have loan approved by this date. If you cannot secure financing, you cannot cancel if you've missed that date. If you haven't applied for a loan or you provided documents, you might lose this protection. Day 30 to 45 is your closing dates. These are just examples of timelines. Your specific contract will identify the actual timelines. You will do a final walkthrough, typically 24 to 48 hours before closing. I prefer to do them at least a day before, not the day of. This allows for any issues to be rectified without delaying closing, hopefully. So what happens if there is a delay on the closing date? Well, if you can't close on time, you may need to request an extension, and this requires seller agreement. If you know that there will be a delay, ask for an extension right away. Nothing gets better with time. So how do you track deadlines? The best thing you can do, break out your phone and put them in your calendar. Put every deadline in your phone calendar with alerts. Set reminders 2 to 3 days before each deadline. That way you have time to work them. So for example, your inspection deadline is day 7. Set a reminder on day 4. Work with your agent on this, okay? Your agent will be tracking these and will remind you, but don't rely solely on them. It's your responsibility. You can use a checklist, right? Create a checklist for every task and deadline. Check it off as you go as the items are completed. What happens if you miss a deadline? Well, it depends on your contract, right? But if you miss the inspection deadline, well, you might waive your right to request repairs and accept the home as is. You can't cancel based on inspection findings, right? Appraisal deadline, it's the same thing. If you miss your appraisal deadline, you may lose your right to renegotiate the price if the appraisal comes in low. Sellers could hold you to the contracted price. Financing deadlines missed. Well, if you don't have your loan approved by the specific date and you can't close, you risk losing your earnest money. Closing date missed. Well, nobody wants to miss a closing date, but the seller can cancel their contract. Seller can keep your earnest money, and you could be in breach of contract. Again, this is not legal advice. If you have legal questions, make sure you reach out to an attorney. Either way, communication is key. If you're going to miss a deadline, tell your agent immediately. Request an extension in writing so that they can get the seller's agreement to extend whatever contingency they need to have extended. Now, most sellers, they are reasonable if you communicate proactively. If you go silent and miss deadlines, they'll be less forgiving. Now, you want to keep in mind that the contingency period is filled with critical deadlines. Missing them can cost you thousands or your entire deal. Stay organized, stay proactive, and stay in communication with your agent and your lender. Now, let's dive into buyer obligations during the contract period. So once you're under contract, you have specific obligations. Failing to meet these obligations can jeopardize your earnest money and the entire transaction. So your obligations include provide documentation to your lender promptly. Your lender will request a lot of information. They're going to want your pay stubs, your bank statements, your tax returns, your employment verification, your DNA. Well, maybe not your DNA, but they're going to want an explanation letter for any credit issues. You need to respond immediately. Delays in providing documents delay your closing. There will always be some last-minute documents required by underwriting, so be prepared. Do not make major financial changes. Do not change your job. Do not quit your job. Don't make large purchases like a car, furniture, or appliances. Don't open new credit cards. Don't close accounts. Leave everything where it's at. Do not do anything with your credit without talking to your lender first. Do not transfer large sums of money between accounts without explanations to your lender first. Do not co-sign loans for anyone, and do not make any late payments on anything. Why does this matter? Your lender is monitoring your credit and finances until closing. Any changes can derail your loan approval. Maintain communication with your agent and your lender. It is very critical. Another key step is preparing funds for closing. Your lender will provide a closing disclosure showing exactly how much you need to bring. You will need down payment closing costs, or down payment, your closing cost, any prepaid items such as property taxes, HOA dues, insurance, things like that. Now you'll take this and you'll subtract the earnest money that you already deposited and any seller credits and, depending on your contract, your feasibility funds. Plan to wire the funds the day before or bring a cashier's check. Personal checks usually are not accepted for large amounts, but checks for the closing, check with the closing agent and see what their limits are. Let's focus on the final walk a bit more. You do the final walk to make sure the home is in the agreed upon condition. The repairs have been completed as promised. Appliances and fixtures included in the sale are present, and there's no new damage that has occurred. You want to make sure the home is clean and debris-free unless otherwise agreed. Don't expect it to be professionally clean unless you've negotiated that in the contract. If issues are found, notify your agent immediately, right? Attend closing would be the next thing you're going to do. Closing typically takes 30 to 90 minutes depending on how much you want to read. If you like to read everything, let the escrow officer know and see if they can send you the docs early for your review. At closing, you'll review and sign dozens of documents. You'll wire or provide funds. You'll receive the keys once the funds have transferred. You got the closing process, which is the paperwork, and then you got the funding process, which is all the money moving. You will need to bring a government-issued photo ID. Please don't leave it in your cup holder. Cashier checks or proof of wire fund transfers, and any documents your agent or attorney instructed. What not to do during the contract period. Do not harass the seller. Do not visit the property uninvited. If you want to go see it, coordinate it with your real estate agent. Don't make demands outside the scope of the contract. Don't miss deadlines or ignore communications. And don't assume everything is fine without checking. You do not want to make any large purchases or financial changes, and you do not assume the deal is done until you have the keys in your hand. Things that can still go wrong will go wrong. Stay focused and engaged until you're holding the keys. You turn it in and you open up the door. All right. We have come to the end of this video. I know we've talked about a lot of stuff. So let's do a quick recap on everything we've covered in the making of an offer phase. So here's what you have learned. You've learned understanding home value through comparative market analysis. You know what a comparative market analysis is and why it matters, and how to evaluate comparable sales data. You've learned how to adjust for differences between properties, how to determine what a home is actually worth, right? You learned determining a competitive offer price. We've looked at factors beyond just the CMA, right? The market conditions, the days on market, the property conditions, and we learned how to use data to determine your offer. We've talked about the psychology of pricing your offer and when to be aggressive versus when to negotiate. We've talked about understanding market conditions, and you learned what defines a seller's market, a buyer's market, and a balanced market, and how market conditions affect your offer strategy and how to determine what type of market you're in. We've also discussed crafting your offer. When it comes to crafting your offer, we talked about offer price strategy and when to give yourself negotiations room, earnest money deposits and how much to offer, contingencies that were explained in detail, such as inspection, appraisal, financing, home sale, and more. Then we talked about when to include or waive contingencies, when to request repairs and seller's concessions, and how seller concessions benefit you and your closing timelines and your flexibility. Negotiations and counteroffers were also discussed, and we looked at how to respond to seller counteroffers, when and how to counter back, and how many rounds of negotiations are typically happen when to walk away from the deal, right? We've looked at how escalation clauses work and when to use them if your state allows. We've talked about personal letters to sellers. Don't do it. And why they're increasingly problematic due to fair housing concerns, and why many agents refuse them, and what to do instead of that when you're to make your offer stand out. We've also talked about what to do once you're under contract and what happens when your offer is accepted, what you need to immediately do for your first steps with the earnest money, the contacting the lender, hiring an inspector. We talked about the timeline and critical contingency deadlines and how to track and meet deadlines. We've also talked about your obligations during the contract period and what not to do while under contract. You also learned the making an offer phase is where smart buyers separate themselves from emotional buyers. And emotional buyers overpay or lose deals, and smart buyers like you use data, strategy, and discipline to win houses without overpaying. You now have the tools to know what a home is truly worth, to craft competitive offers that get accepted, to negotiate effectively and professionally, how to protect yourself with appropriate contingencies, how to navigate the under contract period successfully, how to meet critical deadlines without losing your earnest money. And if this video helped you, please hit that like and subscribe button. I am building the most comprehensive, in-depth home buying series on YouTube. Drop a comment and let me know. Have you made an offer on a house yet? How did the negotiations go? What was the hardest part? I read every comment and I will try to help you the best that I can. I cannot give you specific advice, especially if you're in a relationship with a real estate agent. I do want to thank you, though, for watching. And remember, buying a home is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make. Approach it strategically, not emotionally, and you'll get the best outcome. If you need help finding a real estate agent anywhere in the United States, let me know. Send me a message, and I can vet some for you and give you a short list of people to talk to. I'll see you next time in our next video.